Hey, what's going on, guys? Retake here, and in this video, I'm going to be playing the best comp in Merge Tactics Full Superstar. So this comp is actually, it was really good in the past too, but now I would say it's definitely number one, especially after Undead got nerfed. I know I normally don't really make this type of video, but let's grab the Goblin Machine for the Echo Bench. I know I normally don't really talk about this type of thing, but today, I kind of wanted to talk about something a bit different, and it's a lot more of a serious topic. So if you're not into that, I understand. It might be a bit sort of gloomy, I guess. And it's just something that's been on my mind for a while. So that's just sort of why I wanted to talk about it. And it's going to be um, the death or the loss of a loved one. And I'm not saying that, quick disclaimer, because I've personally experienced this myself, at least not recently, but because a close friend of mine has. And that in turn, um, has caused me to think about that lately as well. So, but before I go any deeper, I want to tell you guys a story. And that is that when I was in my freshman year of high school, I had this close friend. For confidentiality, I'll just say his name is Jay, and he was my closest friend. At the time, I still, talked to him a lot, very close to him. And in our freshman year, of course, there was COVID, and all that stuff. So we were mostly online, because of COVID and things like that. But in our freshman year, his dad actually got cancer, and I talked about this with him a lot because he had cancer for a while, and it's something that when you get, you have like a time frame until that that person's gonna pass. So I've talked about it a lot with him because at the time, his dad's time was ticking, um, and they were just sort of counting down the days that he, had to live, right? Which is just a very scary thing in itself. And I remember leading up to the day that he actually passed, um, his dad's condition was feeling a lot worse. He was in the hospital, and I remember the the day his dad passed. It was in the middle of the night, and the unfortunate timing is that I had my SAT on that exact the next day. Or no, sorry, the funeral. I had the SAT on the night of that day. I think it was like maybe like 2 days before. But his dad's funeral um was on the day of my SAT. That's when they planned it after his father died. And I remember, when his dad died, my friend Jay, he was messaging me. Can I get this Valkyrie, by the way? Maybe it's okay there. I just got the Valkyrie. His dad, he was messaging me, and he was in tears. He was just shocked, obviously, and he was just very sad. At what was going on, and I just couldn't console him. Like that's the time I needed to be there for him, but I just couldn't do it because I was, taking my SAT. And so, what card I need to replace this guy? Um, I had the option. I was like, I could either number one go to his dad's funeral and skip my SAT or do my SAT, but I've been preparing for months for that, and it was a hard choice, but I decided to do my SAT instead, which is I mean, there's no really good choice in that scenario. I would either be wasting or not wasting, but I mean, I had to be there for him, or I could have chosen to go with the SAT, which I prepared months for, and I ultimately chose that. And I just felt bad because um, nobody was there to console him, and he was just having a very tough time. And the reason I mentioned this so late is obviously I mentioned that was my freshman year, but I called him today actually, and we were just talking and playing and catching up, and the conversation landed on him talking about his dad. And one of the things he mentioned to me is on his final day, the day that his dad passed, he had this pain in his leg, this discomfort in his leg. And instead of, telling his mom that, oh, I feel uncomfortable, can I stay home? He said, okay, it wasn't worth it, right? It wasn't worth getting into an argument with his mom because he wasn't very close with his mom. So he didn't want to, make a fuss out of it because he was afraid that if he said, hey, can I stay home from school, his mom would get upset, um, and they would get into an argument. He wanted to avoid that. And instead, he just chose to suck it up and go to school. I remember him telling me he regret that a lot because that was the day his dad passed. And he said he this thought had been haunting him for years that if he had just mustered up that little bit of courage to ask his mom to stay home, he would have been able to spend his dad's last day with him, and hang out with his dad. That's something that had haunted him for a while. And why do I bring this up? Well, because a lot of people don't know this about me, but I get emotional really easily. Like I honestly cry a lot because I'm a very emotional person. I think I inherit that from my mom because my mom is also pretty emotional. And recently, I've just been thinking about my life and what stage I'm at, what I want to accomplish, the problems, and I've just been having a lot of regret because I've been falling behind in a lot of areas, like school. I'm not really getting the best grades right now, and I'm really worried about that. Like, can I graduate in time? Is my GPA too low? Also, I've been worrying about, I don't have an internship coming up. I'm worrying about my future job, and how I'm preparing for that with extracurricular activities. And I'm also just really concerned about my, physical fitness as well, losing weight, things like that. And I've just been worrying about a lot of different things. And what humans tend to do when they worry about these things is that they hyperfixate on these things. And they try to, at least in my experience, place all of their energy on resolving these issues instead of focusing on what good things they have. They tunnel vision on what they don't have versus what they do have. And as I've been going through all of this and all these struggles, my mom has been messaging me. And one thing I forgot to add is that, I did mention I'm a pretty emotional person. On the night or the day after he told me his dad passed, or my friend told me his dad passed, I just went to my parents and it was kind of hard to do, but I just told them about it. And I just like I just cried to them because, my friend just his dad just died and he was telling me about all this pain that he was going through. And just I guess this envisioning him going through that and just like putting myself in his shoes, like he just lost his parents, and just thinking about, if I might lose my parents, just made me very very sad. And that's just where all of this sort of originated. um I guess all my not issues, but all my the topic of this video originated at, because my parents are very supportive, and I guess just envisioning life without them was very sad, as I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. But anyways, going back to what I was saying earlier, my mom was messaging me a lot throughout all of these concerns, and I love my mom, right? She's provided so much for me, my father as well. But despite that, I've, you know, just kind of left her message there, even after reading it a lot of times. Um, I guess I've aired her a lot. Not like completely aired her, but I mean, like, I've seen her message and I was like, yeah, I'll reply to that later, that sort of thing. And that happened a lot, and it happened a lot. And I think a lot of that just comes from just taking her for granted and being like, yeah, she'll be there later. I can respond to that later. And not having any sort of urgency. There will be a time when there's no later with your parents, right? Which is what my dear friend has taught me. There's always going to be a time where your parents will pass and you can't, talk to them anymore. You won't have that opportunity. And I know that a lot of you guys have heard that, right? Like everyone knows their parents are going to die one day. They're not, going to have, the luxury of being able to speak with them. But yet knowing that, a lot of people, including myself, still, you just think logically. You're like, what are the chances that my mom or dad's gonna die tomorrow? Near zero, right? And so you sort of take that for granted and you sort of have that comfort that, like, I can just reply to them later because, they likely will. But everyone thinks that. And in a lot of cases, death is just sudden. It doesn't always happen when someone's old. My friend's dad, he died when he was in ninth grade. That's not, that's, he died a very young man. And look, you're right. Is the chance that, your mom or dad dies tomorrow very low? Yes. Logically, yes. But even with that argument in mind, when you look back at your life after, let's say, your parent dies, I've been thinking about this a lot. When I look back after my parent dies, because it's inevitable, right? The first thing you think about after a loved one dies is not the good times you had, it's the regrets, right? After I keep thinking, if my dad or my mom dies, I'm probably going to be thinking about all the times I've been a bad son, all the times, I've, not spent time with them, done other things, neglected them. Even if you're a good son and you do most of these things right, you're always going to have one regret. Even if you get 99% of the things right, you're always going to have that 1% of regret, like that one day. Like my friend had that one day in his life, he didn't hang out with his dad. That haunted him forever. There's always going to be something. And, I've been thinking about that a lot. I've spent so much time with my mom, and my dad. I have a very close relationship with them. Yet I can always do more because I know that the day my dad or my mom dies, I'm gonna think about this time, right? Like, sure, I've spent the majority of my time with them, but that one day or that one time in college, I just didn't respond to them. Like, what if I just had one more conversation? What if I was able to just spend another hour of my time with them? That's what I think about. So, I mean, I've been thinking about that a lot recently. Um, just because I'm scared, I guess, of the day my parents go, just afraid of envisioning a life without them. And I don't know how I could live with that pain. Just living without my parents. And my friend, he told me after all these years it still haunts him. So if you have both your parents, just one parent, call them, tell them how much you love them, because I can guarantee you will not regret that. And on that note, the little background upgrade, that retake sign, my dad actually got that, so shout out to my dad. Love you, dad. And I did tell him how much I loved him and how grateful I was for that. So sorry for a bit of a different type of video, but if you guys enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.